The town of Dry Gulch had no reason to exist. It wasn't built near a river. It wasn't carved into fertile land. It didn't even sit along a proper trade road. It clung to survival the way desperate men clung to bad luck, tight, stubborn, and unwilling to admit defeat. Dust ruled everything there. It coated the roofs, the wells, the lungs of the people who called it home. It turned the air brittle and the land unforgiving. By the summer of 1876, most travelers passed through without slowing down, but those who stayed rarely left. Eliza Turner never planned to belong to a place like that. Her husband had brought her there with promises, small ones, realistic ones, a patch of land, a quiet life, something built with honest work instead of borrowed fortune. For a while, it had been enough, until it wasn't. The fever came fast, took him faster. 3 days, that was all it took to turn a life into a memory and a home into something fragile. Eliza buried him herself. No preacher, no crowd, just dry earth and silence. And when she stood back up, the land felt different. Not empty, exposed, because in Dry Gulch, a widow didn't inherit safety. She inherited attention. Caleb Rourke noticed her within a week. He noticed everything worth taking. Rourke didn't raise his voice, didn't make scenes. He didn't need to. His power lived in quieter places, contracts, influence, men willing to do what he asked without asking why. And what he wanted sat beneath Eliza Turner's land. Water. Not surface water, the kind that dried up with the season. Something deeper. A natural spring that ran steady and cold beneath the soil, feeding just enough life into the ground to make it valuable in a place where most land was barely worth the dust that covered it. He offered to buy. Eliza refused. He offered more. She refused again. After that, he stopped pretending it was a negotiation. The pressure came slowly. Her credit vanished at the general store. Supplies she ordered never arrived. A fence line she repaired was found cut the next morning. Nothing direct, nothing she could prove, but enough to send a message. She was alone, and alone didn't last long in places like Dry Gulch. The founders' gathering came at the worst possible time. Her north fence had collapsed entirely. The well rig groaned with every pull. One hard storm, one bad week, and everything her husband built would start to fall apart. She needed help, real help. So she went. The town square buzzed with noise, music, laughter, the clatter of boots against wood. It felt almost normal, almost like the place hadn't already decided what would happen to her. Then her name was called. Mrs. Turner. The tone shifted. Not much, just enough. She stepped forward anyway, head high, shoulders straight. Rourke stood near the platform, watching like a man who already knew the ending. "We've arranged assistance for you," the organizer said, avoiding her eyes. Arranged, not assigned, not offered. Arranged. 2 men stepped forward, guiding someone between them. At first, nothing seemed unusual. Tall, lean, dressed like a drifter who'd seen too many miles. Then he lifted his face, and the crowd reacted. His eyes were clouded over milky, unfocused, completely blind. A murmur spread, some curious, some amused, some uncomfortable. "This," Rourke said smoothly, stepping closer, "is Jonah Cade." The name landed heavier than expected. A few older men shifted. 1 or 2 went quiet entirely, but most didn't recognize it. "Used to be something," Rourke continued. "Fastest gun in 3 territories, if you believe the stories." He smiled faintly. Stories tend to change when a man can't see straight anymore. Laughter followed. Not loud, but enough. Eliza didn't join them. She stepped closer, studied him. Jonah stood perfectly still, not reaching, not searching, not uncertain, just waiting. "You're giving me a blind man," she said. "I'm giving you what you paid for," Rourke replied. "You think this is funny? I think it's fair." The crowd watched her, waiting, for anger, for humiliation, for surrender. Eliza exhaled slowly, then turned back to Jonah. "Can you work? Oppose it? Then I can do what needs doing." His voice was steady, grounded, not broken. Eliza nodded once. Then you're coming with me. The walk back to the ranch was quiet. Not tense. Not awkward. Just silent. Jonah didn't ask questions. Didn't stumble. Didn't hesitate. He walked as if the ground spoke to him. As if the world had found another way to reach him after his eyes stopped working. Eliza noticed. But she didn't comment. Not yet. The first few days didn't make sense. Jonah worked, but not the way she expected. He didn't rush, didn't second guess. He moved slowly, deliberately, learning everything through touch, sound, and memory. He repaired a section of fence without ever asking for guidance, measured spacing with his hands, aligned posts by feel alone. It shouldn't have worked, but it did. At night, he didn't sleep. Eliza heard it. The shift in the floorboards, the quiet pacing, the controlled breathing of someone forcing themselves to stay grounded. She didn't ask. Some things didn't need questions. It was the sixth night when everything changed. The dogs started low, not barking, not panicking, just warning. Eliza woke instantly. Shotgun in hand, Jonah was already standing, head tilted slightly, listening. They're close, he said quietly. You can't see that. I don't need to. 3 men moved along the outer fence. Careful, but not careful enough. Before Eliza could act, Jonah stepped past her, into the dark. You're blind, she hissed. Not helpless. Then he was gone. The first man never had time to react. Jonah moved with terrifying precision, closing distance, striking fast, disarming before the man could even understand what was happening. Gunfire cracked once, then silence, then another. Short, controlled, final. By the time Eliza reached the edge of the yard, it was over. 3 men down. Jonah standing still again, breathing steady, like nothing had happened. You're not what they said you were, she said. Jonah turned his head slightly. No, he agreed. After that night, she stopped seeing him as something she'd been given, and started seeing him as something she had. Something dangerous. Something deliberate. She didn't try to fix him. Didn't ask about the past he carried, like a shadow. Instead, she gave him what he seemed to need most. Purpose. Clear tasks. Defined space. Something to hold on to. And Jonah built something out of it. He mapped the land. Every inch. Every sound. Every shift in wind and ground. He hung small metal markers along fence lines that would ring at the slightest disturbance. Set traps that relied on movement, not sight. Turned silence into awareness. Within weeks, the ranch changed. Not visibly, but fundamentally. It wasn't vulnerable anymore. It was ready. You're preparing for something, Eliza said one morning. Jonah didn't look up. They'll come back. She nodded once. I know. When they came, they didn't come quietly. 6 riders, armed, confident, certain they were dealing with a widow and a blind man. The first rider never made it to the gate. The sound of metal rang sharply across the yard. The horse spooked. The rider fell. Gunfire followed, but not chaos. Control. Jonah listened, measured, fired. Each shot placed with terrifying accuracy. He didn't need sight. He needed sound, movement, rhythm. Eliza fired from the window, covering what he couldn't. Together, they didn't just survive the attack. They dismantled it. Within minutes, the riders broke and ran. By the time the law finally came with enough authority to tear Rourke's operation apart, the story had already spread far beyond Dry Gulch. About the widow who didn't break, and the blind man who couldn't be outmatched. They gave him a name after that. Not Jonah, not Cade. Something else. Something earned. The man who didn't need eyes. And Eliza? She was no longer a target. She was the woman who turned what everyone else dismissed into something unstoppable.